Well, happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, August the 6th. Believe it or not, we're moving pretty fast. 217th day of the year. There are 149 days left in the year 2024. And welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Tom. Oh, man, DEI. Woo! It's funny how those initials became such a bad word. It became so bad that DEI is no longer a part of the American higher education culture, at least not in those initials. You see, there was a definite and deliberate effort to undermine it. The undercurrent that DEI was doing some harm to some and was an unfair advantage to others allowed the wolves to sneak into the back door, threaten university presidents, deans, and board members, and more importantly, it threatened fundraising. If you threaten fundraising, you got to go. It made a big Did it make a big difference on most college campuses? Some, but not enough. So we go back to the system where those with the advantages will continue to reap those advantages, while those who could use a boost that would provide benefit to their families, their communities, and etc. need to prosper will continue to want. You know, I look back at my 4 high school years that were spent at a wonderful private Catholic school that provided opportunities that had not previously existed to those who looked like me. My college years were spent at a university where I earned my way by playing football, but even before I was on the field, I was admitted to the university under a government consent decree that said the university had discriminated against people who looked like me, and so the consent decree was to level things out. My first big boy job after college was under another government consent decree because the people who were supposed to do right couldn't bring themselves to do that. So there were many of us who were admitted to the suit and tie corporate world under the pretense that we weren't fully qualified. I always found that funny when I compared myself with those around me. After that, it was another program, affirmative action. I always say affirmative action was in play long before it was put into place to benefit minorities. There were unqualified legacy hires, affirmative action. They were admitted because their parents or grandparents had failed their way through school, but had given money to the schools, and so junior or missing was admitted. That's affirmative action. I saw some on the football team who had no business being there, none at all. That goes for you, Max. You know who I'm talking about. That was affirmative action. But then affirmative action came under attack when it began to benefit minorities, and the old, quote, unqualified people, unquote, surfaced. Not the real unqualified ones who did not deserve to be there, but the qualified who were looking to take a step up in life. Then it was DEI. I can tell you there were many instances where DEI made no positive difference at all. Not because the program wasn't worth it, but because there was little to no enthusiasm for some of the programs. In many cases, such as in one particular case, there was no supplier development programs where minority, women-owned, physically challenged business owners could participate in the wealth, and I mean wealth, of the many dollars that these universities spend daily with majority small businesses. So we'll see what they come up with next. But don't expect any radical differences. History tells you that. We've gone from consent decrees to affirmative action to DEI, and we're still trying to find a solution other than doing what is right. History repeats, and the beat goes on. I'd also want to make a comment about, thank Antley for checking in on us about the hurricane. But Antley, we were on the other side of the state and had no wind weather at all. So our G-List guest today is David Rocker. David is a native of Atlanta, Georgia, serves as the senior pastor of the Connection Church located in Jonesboro, Georgia. He's also the president and founder of Gibraltar Ministries, an outreach ministry where he challenges people to grow physically, mentally, and spiritually in their daily walk of life. David Rocker attended Auburn University on a full football scholarship, and during his time at Auburn, He helped lead the Tigers to winning 3 consecutive SEC championships. That's saying a lot. Okay, so our show today, of course, is sponsored by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. So let's hear it from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Girl customizes the solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Good morning, Barbara Wallace Edwards. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Tom. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well. So everything good in your world?
Everything's good. I'm recovering from, I think, food poisoning from last week, but I'm almost back to 100%.
All right, well, sounds good. Let's get Michael Walker. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Good morning, TG. I'm doing well. Good morning, Barbara. I hope you are doing well also.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's going on in your world, Michael?
Well, it's interesting, Tom, listening to your monologue, and I had prepared to talk about the definition of DEI because they talked about, and you and I have discussed this before, certain people want to make it totally race related. And we've said many times that it's something different. There was an article that popped up because, certain Republicans have been calling Kamala Harris the DEI hire and what have you. And so, as you said, DEI is something now to mean something of someone that's unqualified, not the fact that there's people are a member of a group that's been underserved, underrepresented, and not given quality opportunities. But this article went back and talked about Delano Roosevelt, who was in a wheelchair and stuff, and how he would have been a DEI president. But we're not going to talk about that. They talk about how racism, America is not racist. And Thomas, it's interesting that you talked about DEI and the need for those programs. Well, right down there in your home state of Florida, Asphalt Paving Systems will have to pay $1.25 million to settle a lawsuit with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for creating a hostile environment in which Black employees were subjected to racial discrimination and demeaning treatment. And this is it took over a couple years for it to get to court. But what is so disturbing about it, not only were the Black employees were insulted with the N-word and call a black N and saying, I will never run from a black N. Get this, according to the lawsuits, not only were the plaintiffs called the N-word and boy numerous times by white managers and co-workers, they were forced to work in inclement weather, including heavy rain, while white workers looked on, and they were forced to use the bathroom outdoors while white workers could use indoor facilities.
Wait a minute. You sure? I work for this company, I think.
You remember going to the bathroom outside?
Oh, my God.
We were out there digging, and it started raining, and all the bosses went inside of the trailer. Me and this old black dude was out there digging in the damn rain. And I told him, I said, man, I'm not staying out here in the rain. I'm going inside and getting that trailer. He said, boy, you can't go in that trailer now. You'll get fired. I said, well, they just going to fire me. It's a summer job. So I went up there and opened that door and walked into that trailer. And they were sitting there, boy, and they looked at me like I had come from Mars. After it stopped raining. And when it stopped raining, they told me they were laying me off. I shook their hands and said, thank you. Y'all crazy.
Wow.
Did you collect your unemployment?
I made them pay me for the work I had done.
I don't blame you.
It was a summer job, and I don't know why. Sometimes we were on the quarter system, and so we would get out of school later
Right.
than the schools on the semester system, and so the
Mhm.
jobs would be gone sometimes. And I ended up going to work for Red Rock Construction Company. I called them Redneck Construction Company. But that's the only time I've ever been fired off of a job, but I was proud to be fired.
Good for you.
Anyway, Margaret, go ahead, Michael. You finished?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, this happened. All of these employees, they either resigned or were fired by March of 2022. So that's coming right out of the COVID years and what have you. And so
Right.
now there's a settlement for $1.25 million for those employees that were treated like
No,
that.
I didn't get a settlement.
It
No.
should have, yeah, it should have been more than that, Michael. That's ridiculous in this day and age.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
Barbara, what you got?
Well, Tom, I got an interesting story I found last week. There's a couple of weeks ago, a former Pearl, Mississippi Police Department patrol officer received a sentence of 1 year in prison for forcing one of the inmates he had arrested to lick urine off of the floor. The guy had been arrested and put in a cell, and he kept saying he had to go to the bathroom, he had to use the bathroom, and the policeman kept ignoring him. Said, "Well, if you have to go, you can use it right there." And of course, he ended up having to. And when the policeman came back in, noticed that it was something bad on the floor. He said, "What happened? What happened here?" The guy told him. He said, "I told you I had to use the bathroom." He said, "Oh, we don't do that around here." He made him lick it off the floor. And how inhumane is that? But this just happened, in 2022. So we talk about, DEI stuff. It's just some weird things going on in this world. That's one of them. It's totally unacceptable. He should have been given more than a year sentence in jail.
If you go back to and if you go back to the things I sort of outlined, consent decrees, affirmative action, DEI, so on and so forth, it's because we keep trying to people keep trying to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And many of us aren't interested in going back. I mean, for us three on this call, we probably all went to college because as a first generation person.
Yes.
And so that was obviously a boost up for us. And had they not been under a consent decree, we probably would not have been there, because it took a consent decree to get Harold Franklin in there. He was the first and only for a while. Then, like I said, I had my first big boy job, and Michael worked for a phone company as well. And it was funny, but there were many of us there who were under the consent decree, this was our first, again, big boy job.
Right.
And it was always funny because, I'll say I was, but I'll generalize and say we were staff managers, but we wasn't managing nothing.
Right.
We wasn't managing any money. We wasn't managing any other employees. I guess the only thing we were managing was ourselves.
Yourselves, yes.
Be there every day at 8:00. So it's funny, but it's not, man. They'll come up with another program, and then some people will go around and figure out a way to try to get rid of it. So
yeah, they'll try to get around it some way.
Michael?
Well, speaking of the Olympics, it's still going on, and the Americans have pulled even with China, I think, tied at 21 for goals, gold medals. But when you look at overall, the U.S. is killing at 79. I guess the closest person to them maybe have 30 or 40 total, somewhere like that. But there's a boxer, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing her name incorrectly, and I apologize. She's from Algeria. Her name is Emmy Khalif. When she was born with an X and a Y chromosome, which is the chromosome for a male gender. However, she, from a biological point of view, or I shouldn't say biological, from a observation point of view, she had female genitalia. So they classified her as being a female. And now she's boxing in the Olympics. And she had a fight with a girl from Italy that she hit and broke her nose. And the girl said she'd never been hit that hard. And that was 46 seconds into the fight. And so the other girl just quit. And that started, Tom, you laughing, but that started an outcry about this girl shouldn't be boxing because she had an X and a Y chromosome. And, you know, two X's, that's the chromosome for a woman and stuff. But this girl, you know, she has female genitalia. So there's a big controversy going back and forth. But there's another girl that came to the girl's defense and said she's only experienced modest success. She's been beaten by 9 other girls already. So that kind of throws some other stuff up. So there's probably going to be some more things that are going to come after this on this situation. And what do you do there? And people are saying she can't help it. That's the way she was born.
Right.
It's not like she's transgender. You know, she didn't mutilate herself and try to become a woman and was a man. You know, it doesn't nothing like that. That was just a freak of nature type thing and stuff. So, you know, and we've talked on this show. I know I'm personally opposed to guys waking up and saying, I'm going to be a woman today, and then they go and want to go to women's locker room, play basketball like that. But in this instance, this is an innocent child here that just happened to be somehow science and biology got screwed up, and she ended up with an X and a Y chromosome. But from all practical observation, she's a female, you know, and it's not like she's dominating the competition, you know.
9 other girls have beat her. I think, you know, that sort of levels it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I would definitely agree with that. Yes.
Barbara?
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to the Olympics, Tom, I found some information that I thought was really interesting. Gymnastics is one of my favorite sports to watch when it comes to the Olympics. And the Olympics gymnastics, women's gymnastics first in the Olympics in 1928. And the first Black female to be on Team USA didn't come on until 1992, 64 years after the Olympics, gymnastics start participating in the Olympics. And the first Black to win all-around gold was in 2012, 64 years after it all started. And then I think on yesterday, for the first time, there were 3 Black females on the medal stand at the same time, winning the awards. And that was huge. It's been a long time coming, but that happened on yesterday, and I think that was a wonderful situation. The young lady from Brazil won the gold medal for the floor routine, and Simone Biles, of course, won the silver, and Jordan Childs won the bronze, and that is something that we can all be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in addition to the Olympics, it's also season for election, you know, and people running for president, a couple people running for president. This is one particular guy that has had everything go his way, and he's trying like hell to lose the election when people have set it up. They have set it up for him. Now, you're talking about some DEI, that's your DEI right there.
Right.
Okay. And you know, he was in town over the weekend, and instead of making a case as to why he should be president and talk about his policies versus his opponent policy, he decided to attack a very popular governor in Georgia, Brian Kemp, and all of those people. Well, everybody knows that stupid is not good politics. But yesterday, he was on an interview regarding interest rates, the economy, and, you know, the stock market crashed yesterday. And I feel like it's due to the fact that Jerome Powell and the Feds have waited too long to lower and cut interest rates. I said that a long time ago, that they're going to turn around and tip the economy. Well, when Trump was asked about it, he said the economy tanking is all due to immigration because they got people that are coming out of insane asylums and stuff and coming over here. How in the hell does that have anything to do with economy? You think the people that are migrating across the border know anything about the U.S. economy? Do you think they know anything about stocks, interest rates? That's the farthest thing from their mind. I just absolutely couldn't help myself. I laughed and laughed when he said it. And this economist that was on CNN, he was being asked about it, and he said, "Well, I'm going to say what the former president said when he was on stage with Joe Biden when he said, I don't know what he said, and I don't think he knows what he said. He says, I don't know if Trump knew what he was talking about, and I don't know if he knew what he was talking about."
He never
It's
does.
hilarious that he would say that.
Well, Michael, it used to be funny to me. It's not funny to me anymore. It's sad. It's really sad that people can still support this guy after he gets on and he cannot hold a decent conversation. They said that he speaks at a 5th grade student's level right now. That's speaks and writes at that level. That's sad. That someone well, first of all, he's a felon with 34 counts, and he's been, found guilty of a lot of other things. But the man, he has no substance. He has nothing that he brings to the table. I don't understand. And I know everybody saw that interview he did last week in the National Association of Black Journalists. That was beyond crazy. Beyond crazy.
Well, I think what I've seen from, if you look at Facebook and all that silliness, people who support him don't necessarily support him. They denigrate whoever's running against him.
That's true.
Or in George's case, Brian Kemp, and so on and so forth. So they're not saying anything positive about him. They're just saying negative stuff about
everyone else. Yeah.
And it's not even, 99% of the time, it's not true.
Right.
And they said what a great job he did in that debate against Biden.
Right.
He never answered a question.
Never.
He never answered a question. How can you say he did well? And so I don't know. I just, we hopefully one day he'll go away.
Yeah.
I pray.
Hopefully we can have some peace.
But this is a classic case, and everybody thought that he was going to change who he was after his near-death experience. Interesting how that reversed course, and it did fairly quickly. That's just, it's incredible that somebody like that. But I spoke to somebody once that knew him. I said, how does he get up and do this? And the guy looked at me and said, he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. He gets up every morning and say, let's go get it. And he's just totally oblivious.
I go back to the 1980s in the USFL. He destroyed the USFL.
Mm-hmm.
USFL had a chance to make it.
Yes.
They were doing really well. They signed people like Herschel Walker and the quarterback from Buffalo. They were getting some of the top NFL talent.
Yes.
They were designed to be a spring league.
Mm-hmm.
They let him in, and he insisted and just went back and forth with them over the fact that they needed to go head up with the NFL. And they went up, head up the NFL, and nobody ever heard from them again.
Right.
And tried to sue the NFL, and they won the suit, but the judge awarded them $1. They got triple damages, so they got $3.
$3.
But he destroyed that. And so I just don't. I don't think people look past. Now, some of the people I see on Facebook, and I saw this yesterday, and I just wonder why they're so full of hate.
Yeah.
Man, what happened to you? I knew several of them. I knew about 4 or 5 people yesterday. And it's like, what happened to you? Why are you? And they never say anything positive about him. They just were dogging out Kamala Harris.
They don't have anything positive to say about him. They can't even find a positive thing to say about the man. Yeah. He's not been successful in anything other than lying. And what can there be their defense for him?
So,
well, if I were him, I'd take a look around. You have Republicans for Kamala popping up. You have white women for Kamala popping up. It's kind of interesting. You had Black women for Kamala hold a call. Barbara, you were a part of that.
Yes.
And then the very next night, there were white women for Kamala that raised a bunch of money. And then there was a Black men for Kamala And then after that, there was a white man for Kamala.
Right.
Now there's Republicans for Kamala. To me, I take a look at that and say, maybe I'm doing something wrong here, and Tom, I go back to something you said earlier. He cannot be too smart, because if you look at the math of it, just the basic math of what you need to win, and you look at this groundswell and you're not increasing your base. It's good to have your base and those people that support you no matter what, because that help brings along other people. But those people in the middle that's undecided, you're not giving them anything to want to support you. Okay.
Right.
So how do you not look at that and say, all right, we need to change? As Einstein said, the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Right.
Right.
But the sad part, Michael, I really think he probably has some advisors who are trying to steer him in the right direction. But I think it's just him. It's just, that's why he sees it, and he gets off script. He can't stay on script. So he just goes out there and starts talking, and it's word salad. It makes no sense at all. He talks for 5-10 minutes. And then you go, what did he just say? There's no policy. It never talks about any policy.
You ask a question about policy, he ventures off into
Somewhere else.
Like,
absolutely.
He ventures off into, she used to say she was Indian. Now she's black.
And Tom, you have to say it like he said, black. Like, not she's black. What?
Black jobs.
Yeah.
Black jobs.
And what is a black job again? Anybody that has a job.
Yesterday we had some guys come over. We did a new, put some flooring in my office. 2 young men, both Latin, from Brazil. And those people come over here because they want to work, man.
Right.
They ain't coming over here to be like you. Shit, they don't want to live next door to you. They want to work, And I just don't understand what do you got against them? Why? But I looked at the people on Facebook who I knew who were spewing hate. One guy tried to excuse himself by saying, well, I didn't post this, somebody else posted it, but I figured there was no harm in just repeating it. Okay, I'll send you a note privately.
Yeah.
You ought to be, because he was one of those guys on the football team that never got promoted past the scout team. And so maybe he's feels less than. Who knows?
He was one of those practice all-stars, wasn't he?
He wasn't even a practice all-star.
Well, some of you black
and
players.
I hope he's watching this, because he knows I'm talking about it.
Some you black players took his position, so he wasn't. He's just not happy about that, and he's still suffering from that condition he had back then. Yeah, the black jobs pushed him out. So, and I really think that's what it comes down to, Tom. When these people are supporting him, I think there are so many of them that are fearful that they're going to lose their upper echelon positions and power with so many people of color coming into this country. They're afraid that they're going to lose the majority.
I'll tell you, I'll give you 2 examples. One was a girl I went to high school with. She was never a cheerleader. She was never on any of the organizations and so on and so forth. She didn't live over the mountain in Birmingham. That was a big thing. If you lived over the Mountain Brook, Vestavia, so on and so forth. She lived in the city around black people. And I think that probably set her back some. She wasn't an over the mountain girl, Right. And God, she's got so much hate in her, man. She prints stuff that is like, what happened to you? And then the other guy is the guy I was telling you about that, I think, I don't know if he ever played in a game, and it's like, man, sit down somewhere, So anyway, anything else? Let's go talk to David Rocker then. So let's say Hollywood's got the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G list. And our G list guest today is David Rocker. David is a native of Atlanta, Georgia, and serves as a senior pastor of the Connection Church located in Jonesboro, Georgia. He's also the president and founder of Gibraltar Ministries, an outreach ministry where he challenges people to grow physically, mentally, and spiritually in their daily walk of life. He attended Auburn University on a full football scholarship. During his time at Auburn, he helped lead the Tigers to win in 3 consecutive SEC championships. I don't think we've done that since then. Being a dominant force on the defensive line, he achieved many accolades such as All-American, All-SEC, Most Valuable Player. He was also selected as a finalist for the Vince Lombardi Award, recognizing the nation's top defensive lineman. Went on to play professional football in the NFL, 4 years with the Los Angeles Rams. And while playing, he rededicated his life. He began to encourage teammates along with their families to attend Bible study, which grew steadily during his involvement. He's got a bachelor's degree in adult education from Auburn, a broadcasting degree from the Connecticut School of Broadcast, and a master's degree in leadership from Luther Rice College. He's married to his childhood friend, Constance. They have 5 adult children. They reside in the suburbs of Atlanta. So let's welcome David Rocker. Good morning, David. How are you, man?
Man, so glad to be on the show. I actually forgot that I was on the show. I was so in tune to the conversation. I'm like, oh, I forgot I'm a guest on it. So
Good
thank
morning,
you.
David. Welcome to the show. Barbara's going to kick it off with you. Barbara, go ahead.
I am. David, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. And I just want to say I admire you so much. I have been walking with the rock for a long time.
Oh, wow,
so
that's good.
I want you to tell our audience about walking with the rock. What all does that involve, and what was your motivation to start that?
Well, believe it or not, even though I'm so much in the public eye, I am a very private person personally. And my kids, I wasn't into the social media thing or any of that, but my kids would just say, Dad, you need to just do something on social media because you be dropping these great nuggets. You need to do this. And I was already at this place in my life where I was just going through that transition, and I knew I had to get back into doing something physical, just really moving my body a little bit. So I just started walking. And as I would walk, I started to share just little personal stories, inspirational messages. And from that point on, bam, Walking with the Rock was birthed, and it has been going strong ever since. And I'm just blown away from teammates and people I've grown up with who I'll run into and they just say, hey, now you know how it works on social media. People don't always comment. Right. But they're watching.
They're watching, yes.
Yeah. And I'll run into someone at the store and they're like, hey, man, I love Walking with the Rock, man. Keep doing it. I'm out there walking a little bit now. So I'm moving. So as long as it's making a great impression, in this world that we're living in now, we need some positivity. How about
that?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Thank you for that.
Michael?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you, David, for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about, you have a master's degree in leadership.
Yes.
From Luther Rice College and Seminary.
Yes.
And I want to ask you a question, and it's often asked, and I'd like to hear your position on it.
Yes.
Are leaders born or are they made?
No, leaders are not born. Leadership is actually a process. I think a lot of times we just hear that phrase that they're a born leader. No, you're not a necessarily born leader. You may have attributes in a sense that you're not afraid to step forward and take charge. But leadership is a process because there are so many different ways of leading people. I mean, it's just like one of those things. Tom, you can relate to this in a sense of having a coach. You can have a good coach. You can have a bad coach, but they're both coaches. Yeah. Nope, it's the leadership style in which they use to reach their players. So leadership is a process, and I think that's where people can mess up a lot of times. Especially a great example was me coming from football and going into ministry. Coming from football, where everything is black and white, I was just so used to, listen, can you get it done or you can't get it done? But now I have to learn how to put a little whipped cream on it and say, first of all, how are you doing today? I need to ask you a question. So it's these things that you learn, these different coaching styles. So leadership is a process, but I don't really think you're born a leader, but you can have the attributes that will make you a good leader.
Okay, great.
I want to take you back to playing football. 3 consecutive SEC championships.
Yes.
We had a defensive line that it was fun to watch play.
Yes.
Yes. One of the best in the nation. Yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
what do you think about who we are and where we are now as a team?
You know, Tom, I feel like the guy, and we so many people can relate to this in a sense of the old school guy who's always looking back saying, well, back in my day.
Yeah.
Oh, guys are not as tough as, back in my day. And the sport has changed a lot. And that's the thing. And our culture, so much has changed in a way of just natural toughness. So when you're looking for something that's just not in existence anymore, because everyone on this panel, whether you're a female or male, we grew up outside. We grew up outdoors, which naturally just toughened us up playing on the playground. You learned all this stuff. Well, now when you're coaching up guys who they don't have that experience, you're trying to teach them about toughness and they just don't know about it. So your eye changes in how you see them and the way that you define toughness. So I have to watch the game from a totally different perspective. Because it can take me to the edge of my salvation if I really get caught up. Like, oh my God, where are you getting these soft guys from?
Kind of like
real football players,
we used to play in the street and you'd call the coach, I want you to go down by Miss Bess's mailbox and I'm gonna take it to you.
Exactly. Guys, they have no natural instinct. So it's just so much stuff that's really difficult. So I stopped coaching a couple of years back and I realized it was one of those things. I'm like, I'm an old school coach and gosh, when you have to start meeting with parents because the child went home and told their mom that, not a way of you've cursed the child, but you just was direct with the child. Hey, 50-50. I had a kid I called 50-50. And it was like, why do you call him 50-50? I said, because it's a 50% chance that he's going to work to be great today. And it's a 50% chance that he's going to be sorry today. Well, he went home and told his mom. And now you're like, you know what? I don't have time for these type of meetings. If the child want to be a football player, be a football player. If he wants to be a cheerleader, go be a cheerleader. But I'm here to coach football. So I'm like, it's time for me to move to something else, Tom. It's just time for me to keep it moving.
David, let me jump into here. And you said a couple things here, and I relate to everything you said about us being outside and we had to learn to get tough. But a lot of that you're talking about right there is we had to get physically tough also.
Yes.
We were physically tough. But in addition to that, we had to be mentally tough. That was something that all my coaches stressed to me was being mentally tough,
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to figure out nowadays with kids, why is it that they're not mentally tough with all the other stuff that's going on around them? Where did they lose that?
Well, it comes from, and I hate to keep referring to this, but it's just the facts. Tom, it was one of the things as I was listening to the show early when you talked about people want to keep going back. It's not necessarily a thing of keep going back, but you have to kind of know where you come from in order to be able to really move forward in a positive direction. A lot of us on this panel, we could talk about being mentally tough because our parents were, they played a very, very major role in making us physically tough. They made you endure some things. They made you get up in the morning when you didn't feel like it. This generation, they made you eat food that you did not like. Hey, you don't like it, we'll find something else to eat, but that's what you're going to eat today.
Right.
When you lose those elements today in today's society, when parents are not really working to instill that, it can be a challenge. A perfect example. I grew up as an inner city kid. Of course, the dream is to move out into the suburbs and get away from the inner city. I did that. But one of the things that I also did was I made sure that my kids went to a camp in the inner city during the summer so they can see in the sense of how others live, the benefits of what they live. But it also gave them some challenges that they weren't used to in the suburbs that helped them toughen up mentally. And a lot of times we're just kind of missing out on that today. Anything now that becomes a mental challenge to our kids today, that's called stress.
So true.
And we're used to
Right.
what? You what?
And I think, and they went through this period where they all wanted to be gangsters. They all
Yes.
wanted to be tough. Wanted to
Yes.
be this. So
Yes.
I got my son in the car. I said, "Come on, let's go." He said, "Where we going?" I said, "Come on, let's just go."
Yeah.
So I took him down to the projects, and they were playing basketball. I said, "Okay, you can go ahead and get out and going on out there." And
Yeah.
I ain't going out there. Well, I thought you wanted to be tough.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I have to put this in, David. You talked about our parents and the role they played in that.
Yeah.
I remember, and I was raised by my grandparents, so I had a whole nother level of mental toughness I had to go
Yes.
through.
Oh, yes.
And my
Oh,
great grandmother was right behind me. But I remember one time my grandmother, I don't know what I was doing. She said, "All right, I'm tired of you. Go outside and get me a switch and bring it back." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. You want me to go get a switch
That's
and
right.
bring back to you for you to beat me with it?"
Mental
not-
torment.
And you better not bring a small one back, or they're gonna go get a real big
Exactly.
Okay, Barbara. That's it.
one. Yeah.
And you know
You
what,
better
Barbara?
be
That's
low.
what I tried the first time. I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, she want me to go get I got some little twigs and brought
Oh,
back
yes.
and gave it to her." She
Oh,
said,
man.
"Don't let me have to go get one." 'Cause
Right.
That's mental toughness. That's
Absolutely.
toughness
You have to
being
get one
developed
where you
right there.
take the leaves off and go.
Yep.
That's when you got to reel with it.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, and
David, I wanted to.
Hey, Michael, and then they start whipping you and tell you to stop crying.
Yeah, don't cry.
You better not cry.
You see,
Yeah.
that was challenging, right, Tom? That was a tough
Yeah.
thing to do. You want me to endure this pain, but don't say anything either. It's like, oh my God. Mental toughness.
Yeah, don't
Mental
cry. You
toughness.
better not cry as I
Yes.
beat your butt.
Right. Exactly. Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
man. That's tough.
What were you about to say, Barbara?
I was going to ask you a question. I was going to,
Yes.
going back even before you came to college and stuff.
Yes.
Your parents must have really instilled getting involved with you, and your brother Tracy, of course, played at Auburn as well, and,
Yes.
and excelled in football, and is still involved in athletics as a coach.
Yes.
Talk about your parents' motivation and inspiration to you all, and how did they motivate you, help you to shape who you are today?
I grew up, and I have to say I had great parents. I had great parents who even though, again, we grew up in the inner city, but they taught us about class. They taught us about toughness. I come from a family, even with my grandparents, who were highly involved in making things better. My grandfather would drive around with a trunk full of stuff to give away to people who were in need. He would pick up a pair of shoes and he'd just keep them just in case he ran into someone who needed some shoes. That's what I come from. I can remember doing Meals on Wheels with my grandfather, transitioning into with my parents. My mom was a director at a health facility where if you needed a physical, you went up there and you said, "I need to see Miss Rock." And Miss Rock is going to make sure all the athletes would get their physicals done there. My parents, they were the first to bring a booster club to our school. We never knew about booster clubs and getting parents involved. So that's where I get a lot of that from, in a sense of making a difference in the community, regardless of the community that you come from. It's being able to make things better, not being able to settle, but to really work to make things better. So that's what I come from. And I could tell you a funny story about during the recruiting, when all the major, all the coaches are coming, and my mom just being who she was, a coach very well known. And I will say this, he played at Auburn, but he did not coach at Auburn. But he came to visit, and he was there sitting, and that's when people just kind of wonder, how did we miss out on going to Georgia? Notice I haven't said any names, but how do people say, how would we miss going to Georgia?
Right.
And the coaches came, the whole staff, being a high recruit, they are talking and talking, and my mom, just being the person who she is, she says, "I appreciate all you all coming, and I appreciate the input, but I don't understand why the head coach's mouth is not working. And he's not saying anything."
I love it.
Oh my! But that's who she was,
Right.
in a way of, you want my child to come and play at your school, and everyone else is talking, but
You're
he's
not
going to
saying
be playing for
anything.
you. And
Yeah,
that's who she was.
I
So that
love
was
it.
one of those things that you just start to pick up and learn. And it was so funny that even when Coach Dye would come to the house, my mom and dad would have very direct conversations, not being disrespectful, but
Right.
very direct conversation. And that's why they could have developed such a very close relationship, because they knew if you're going to talk to the Rockers, just know you're going to get truth, and you're going to get it direct without being disrespectful. So that's what I come from.
That's awesome.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
Anything else? Michael, Barbara?
Yeah, Tracy, I want to go back to over to the
David.
religious side now.
I get it.
since you're
I get it all
minister.
the time. That's
Yeah,
normal. I've grown up with it all my life. Tracy, I know. I'm the good looking one, but they just get it mixed up. But
I wrote it
Michael,
down.
I'm
I
just
wrote it
kidding.
in my script. I wrote Tracy. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The 10 Commandments.
Yes.
You know, most of us that grew up in the church and what have you, we learn about the 10 Commandments and things
Yes.
like that. I'm trying to understand with all the stuff that's going on in the world today,
Mm-hmm.
and the people that are doing horrible things to people today. You got to know they've been exposed somewhat to that. They have
Yes.
to some way,
Yes.
because religion has been around. How do you explain to somebody, a young kid that's coming to your church to be mentored by you, that they need to have faith, they need to follow the 10 Commandments when all around them is going haywire and nobody's following the 10 Commandments?
Well, here's the big thing. And I think one of the biggest things that we have lost in the church has done a great job on teaching people to be religious, but have failed very poorly in developing disciples. So a lot of people just want to keep repeating what they've heard. This is what I heard the old preacher preaching 30 years ago, and then this is what I heard the next one preach 20 years ago, more so than you need to study this word for yourselves. If you start looking at 1 Samuel, here's what you'll understand. The 10 Commandments, which is 10 only of the 300 more that is out there, it's there, but we need to understand here's the deal. We live in a fallen world, and what man has done. Remember, God was the one who led the Israelites out into the desert and was the one who was overseeing them. It was man who said, give us a king.
Mm-hmm.
It was man who said, listen, we want to, making it relevant today. We want a president. We don't want God to be God. We want to follow a man. God clearly explained. Now, listen, if you do this, you need to understand what's going to happen. You're going to have these men who are going to take your kids and they're basically going to start working. No longer it's going to be in the house. They're going to have to work outside for the king. That's how we get taxes. And it goes on to show all these things that was going to make things fall, that now here's what the devil will do. He will flip the script and we'll keep thinking it's God's fault, when we need to start looking in the mirror and saying there's a lot of stuff that's going on, Michael, that we as people have done. That's why Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar. He came being concerned about people's soul. Even right now, what's going on in politics, the biggest mistake that people in the church can make, especially the church leaders, is to get caught up into the politics when we should be concerned about who's governing your soul. Man is going to be man, and man is just evil from the fall. So that's one of the biggest things, is teaching people to be disciples. That's the big thing that I push. You got to read this thing and start seeing this thing. You start realizing, oh, man did that. Oh, why did they take the 10 Commandments out of the courtroom? Because even if you were evil, just by the mere fact of the presence of those 10 Commandments make you say, you know what? I probably need to do right. But if I totally take it out of your sight, now you can just roam freely and do what you do. And that's the big thing now. We've always had issues. We've always had problems. But have you noticed that? How many school shootings did we have when there was prayer in school?
Right. I agree.
That's the thing that you have to start looking at, where it was just by the mere presence of the word, it was making a difference. So now what we're doing, because the word says we're living in the last days. In the last days, men will become lovers of themselves. So when you become a lover of yourself, you're going to do anything to put yourself in a position that it can be all about you. Forget about what God has said. He's no longer the final authority in those people's lives. he's a throw-in. But for us who are believers, we're saying even in the fallen state, no matter how bad this world gets, the word of God will always be the final authority in my life. And that becomes a very tough thing, because now you'll have people in church who you have to make a decision. Are you in it for the money? Or are you in it for the people? Have you really been called to do this? Or is this just a form of entertainment? So when you really start knowing that you have been called to this, Tom, I tell so many people, I said, it's going to take a lot to impress me. I've already played in front of 100,000. So to preach in the church of 200, that's not oh my God, I'm a rock star now. No, I've tried that, and guess what? It failed me. So I perform now for an audience of one. And as long as I'm pleasing God and people are changing for the better, my job is done.
Good deal. Let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
Going from college to the pros is a heck of a transition. It's a mental transition as much as it is a physical transition.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get, and if you've been in a pro camp, you know there are all kinds of human beings.
Oh, yeah. You have a totally different outlook on life.
How did you get people to move in one direction in terms of their spirituality?
It was one of those things of still staying true to who I was. That was one of the big things. I think a lot of times people try to change and become someone who they're not. When I got to that place of rededicating my life, it was like, God, you want to use me? Because I still knew who I was. I'm aggressive by nature. I'm a defensive lineman. I mean, how is this going to work? But Tom, I stayed just being true to me. And it was one of those things that when people would try to say something, it's being able to give an honest answer, but understand, still staying true to your change. Because I had those guys because remember, now when I first got there, Tom, I hadn't rededicated. I was still wild. But now when I came back and people start seeing my life change, they're like, when a guy gets mad, oh, Rock, you trying to be all religious now. I remember when you did this. Normally people get so shameful. Oh, I know. I would be the guy who's like, you're right. I did, and I did it well. But guess what, brother? I ain't doing it no more. Don't get mad because you can't make it over to this side because you're afraid. Now it's putting pressure on them. So now it's just start being that same thing. It's talking to guys, being able to say, listen, you can still go out here and play ball the way it needs to be played. It's just a sense of saying, God, you're a priority now, more so than football. Football no longer sits on the throne. God does. But of course, by me honoring God, I'm going to do my best out here on the field.
Barbara, Michael?
Yeah, David, I watched another show that you did with Byron Franklin, the Shoulder Pad.
Yes.
And on that show, you talked about the importance of every man having another man that you can talk to. So you can, regardless of how long you've been married and has a spouse or whatever, talk about that. And why do you feel that way?
Fred Stokes, dear friend of mine, we actually were teammates during our time with the Rams, but he is actually, I'm closer to him than I am my own biological brothers. We talk every day, if not twice a day.
Wow.
And he is what I call, he has a program called Lint Brother, L-I-N-T. And the L-I-N-T for men is the life I never tell. Because men, we don't talk. I mean, we don't really talk. I mean, we'll talk, but we don't really talk. Women will talk. You call up a woman, she's going to call up her girlfriend and she's going to lay it all out. Girl, I woke up this morning with a headache, and then you just want to be, John was just acting. Men can be dealing with some stuff, and here's what they're going to get. Hey, brother, what's going on with you? I'm good. All is well. Man, I'm just making it through the day. But what are you really? Come on, man. Talk to me. So one of the things that we just firmly believe is every man, they won't say it, but every man, Barbara, every man needs another man to talk to. Men would try to make it all cute and say, yeah, me and my wife is my best friend. That's cute. That may be true on the surface, but when it comes to man talk, no, you need another man that you can talk to. Because when you really start dealing with man problems, because you're not going to sit right here and tell your wife if it's a tough situation you're going through. You're not going to tell your wife, well, honey, I'm afraid too. See, she's going to look at you like, what?
Right. Right.
But when you have that brother who you can call up and be like, hey, man, I'm dealing with this, man. I don't know what I need to do. And it's got me a little shake. I'm shaking in my boots a little bit. And that brother can say, hey, man, I've been there. Here's what you're going to do. A, B, and C. Like, whew, Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. So every man needs another man to talk to. You need a lint brother. You need someone, because that lint is that all of us can dig in our pockets, and deep down in that corner, you're going to find some lint. I don't care
there.
how
Yes.
cool and smooth, what kind of suit you have on. You need that lint brother. You need that brother who you can call, whether it's late at night, early in the morning, and just be able to really talk to what's going on. And Tom, you can relate to this. It's like when you retire from ball, you'll sit right there, and you don't really have, who can relate to the level you've been on?
Right.
You just can't call and talk to John down the street. But when you have that brother who you can talk to and say, man, you know what? I'm struggling today. I'll never forget being home for the first time during the fall. I was never here when the leaves fell at my house. I mean, I bought my house, but I was never here. I didn't have anyone to talk to about that. How do you make this transition when you smell the cut grass and you're ready to go out here and play? But guess what? You're not playing anymore. You don't call, you can't call any of your friends because all your friends are at practice right now. And you're sitting at the house about to lose your mind. Who do you have to talk to? You need a lint brother. You need someone who you can talk to about anything. And understand, the lint brother must understand that this is not something that you share with through pillow talk. It's you being able to really just say, this is my brother. What we talk about is what we talk about. No judgment. And I'm still going to love you the same tomorrow. It's not competing.
Right.
This is truly my brother.
Awesome.
You know, you're absolutely right. I've got a good friend of mine who is having some physical issues, and they're real serious. But he doesn't know that I know how serious it is because somebody else has told me. And so I said, man, how you doing? Oh, man, I'm doing great. You know, I just, okay, good deal. You know? I'll be here when you need me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we like, you know, it's like we don't like to go to the doctor.
Yes.
It's like,
right.
you go to the doctor, he's gonna find something wrong.
Right.
Anyway, anybody got anything else? And this has been wonderful, David.
Yes.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I love what you guys are doing. Keep doing it. And again, I appreciate you guys having me on so much.
Let me ask you about your 5 kids. How your kids are doing?
Kids are doing great. You know, when they're grown, that's the beautiful thing. You know. So as long as they're grown and they're out of our pockets, that's the beautiful thing. Being able to live the life of empty nesters and being able to take vacations when we need to, and all we have to do is worry about feeding ourselves. So Tom, we can eat good now. You know, we don't have to do the buffets now. We can eat real good. So it's been wonderful. It's really been good. I cannot complain at all. Happy, very happy.
Well, thank you, man. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. You guys listen. You guys have a wonderful day, and you guys be blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Right.
See you later.
I do my closing comment. I forgot that Sean's got to do her got a minute. Sean, are you out there? Or did you give up on me? Are you still going to do the got a minute?
Good morning to everyone joining in with us. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. With presidential elections happening this year, I thought it would be fun to share that on this day in 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act, guaranteeing African Americans the right to vote. The bill made it illegal to impose restrictions on federal, state, and local elections that were designed to deny the vote to Black people. After the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, Johnson was officially elected in a landslide victory and used this mandate to push for legislation he believed would improve the American way of life, which included stronger voting rights laws. In a speech to Congress on March 15, 1965, Johnson outlined the devious ways in which election officials denied African American citizens the vote. Although the Voting Rights Act passed, state and local enforcement of the law was weak, and it was often outright ignored, mainly in the South. The Voting Rights Act gave African American voters the legal means to challenge voting restrictions and vastly improve voter turnout. Go vote. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
Thank you, Sean. Sorry about skipping over you there, but you got it in. It was very good. So let me do my closing comments for today, or as I see it. Who is black and who is not? That's part of the silliness going on in the race for the presidency. What is disappointing, at least it is to me, when politicians act out and call other politicians names, it gives those in the audience, so to speak, to feel they need to express their childishness as well. Last week, I read nasty comments from several of my old high school friends and classmates and a former college teammate who never played, I'll add, about Kamala Harris. And it was disappointing to me, sad, that they would lower themselves to try and denigrate someone that they don't know, someone who is just doing their job. If you're for someone else, say that. If you support someone else, then be positive about that. Be positive about who you're for and what you believe and what you stand for. Don't hide behind someone else's negativity. Don't belittle yourself. You know who you are, and you can do better. Next time, I'm going to call your names out. And that's our show for today. Thank the audience. We appreciate you. Thank our G-List guest, David Rocker. You're absolutely wonderful. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thanks again to the TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this August the 6th. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. And if you've got one, if you've got an extra smile, give one to someone else today. They may need it. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe.